language is my greatest healing tool. It really is. So I guess it's our magic and our power, and it's up to us to acknowledge it, respect it and utilise it, you know. I say it every day. I'm like, if you practice culture every day, you'll never have a bad day in your life that you can't get through, because our culture is our greatest strength.
Yama, I'm Brooke Boney. I'm a Gamilaroi woman, and I'm very proud to be an ambassador this year for the New South Wales Languages Week. And the theme is Let Our Voices Fly. My language journey started when I started speaking language on radio by saying Yama ahead of my news bulletin. And I have to be very humble about this. I am at the very beginning of my journey, and this week I've been out on my home country up near Inverell in Ashford to take a journey back to where it kind of all began, really. My grandfather was on the mission out at Ashford called Dead Bird, and we went back out there this week and I had a language lesson. So I'm at the very beginning. I'm nowhere near an expert, but the whole experience has been, it's been so wonderful, because I've reflected on how, you know, this is the language that, you know, his family, his parents would have spoken. It's the language of our ancestors. It's the language that our ghosts and you know, the whispers on the breeze out on Gamilaroi country, this is what it is. And so to be able to you know, to reinvigorate it, to revitalise it, and to be a part of that is an incredible opportunity. I feel so lucky. It sort of feels like we're putting the link back into a chain that's been broken. And so I'm very excited. I'm going to ask you all now to introduce yourselves and tell us where you're from, and then we'll start talking about our language journeys. So we can start over here.
My name's Emma Stewart. I'm a proud Bidjigal woman from La Perouse, my grandmother's country, and I live on Dhirrangarn country in Merimbula on the far south coast.
Yagu Gandangara here on Gadi country. Danai Dalang Dharug Dharawal. Naya Marimare Murawa. So I come from many clans across Sydney. And one of them is here today. It's an honour to be here on Gadi country, which is my grandmother's country.
Yuwaalaraay and Gamilaraay fellow from up the northwest of New South Wales, or central north New South Wales. Currently living on the eastern side of Gamilaraay country, just south of Tamworth.
Beautiful. Yuradjuri. Good day. My name's Marion Packham, proud Wiradjuri woman from Condobolin, and born and raised on the banks of the Lachlan River. My family came from the land reserve out in Condobolin, and I was fortunate that I grew up in town with all of my aunts and uncles and grandmothers around me. And my language journey started when I was a young child, hearing language around family, which we only spoke at home, only with family, not to be shared publicly. And then later in life, when the elders did give me permission to teach language within, Wiradjuri language within our community, part of a language program. And we are very fortunate to work with language groups across Australia.
Hello everybody, my name is Ray Kelly. I'm Dhangatti Gumbaynnggirr. Ngai Gordonara Kempsey Armidale, living in Newcastle nowadays. I've been a board member in the first period, and I've just rejoined. I've been happily welcomed back for a second term. I may not go a third term, so it's great to sit down and have a conversation with people about language and about the future of language, particularly for across the state. So very pleased to be with you.
Beautiful. And now that you know where we're all from, I'd like to acknowledge that we are filming today on the land of the Gadigal people. I've had most of my adult life here on Gadigal land, so I am incredibly grateful to be here. And you know, there's so many different mobs here on Gadigal land, and as a Gamilaroi woman, I never take for granted that the people and the land here is so generous to us. You know, there's so much opportunity, yeah, I feel truly humbled and truly grateful. Let's start the conversation by talking about what does language mean to you?
I think language is like the essence of who we are. It strengthens our spirit, it strengthens our understanding and our knowing of ourselves and of country. Language is just everything. It's hard to describe something so sacred, but I guess it's, yeah, the essence of who we are as a people.
It's our identity, hey?
It's a big part of our identity.
Yeah, and I think too the way we communicate with each other is really, you know, fundamental. Communicate through our ceremony, our songs, our dances, just everyday language as well. It's really important for us here now today to revive our language. You know, all of us have reclaimed our language, and now, you know, we might be all different levels and understanding and knowledges around language, but the most important thing is that coming together and singing up country, the next generation. I believe that we can all do this, and then with our gurung, our children, I want them not to be reviving language. I want them to be speaking and normalising the language as just part of everyday life. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Even hearing you do your introduction in language, it's so special to be able to have that connection. And you know, it's not just to the past, like you said, it is to the future as well. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Odee, what does language mean to you?
Language is all about identity and connection. So language connects us to place, to our country where our languages always exist. That connection to our old people, you know, speaking the same words that they had on their tongues, teaching that to children today. You know, we're sort of maintaining that bridge between our old people and the future generations that will be speaking the same words, you know, and after we're gone. That's the hope, that's the dream, that the language lives on, and because, you know, it's integral to our identity. You know, even if someone doesn't know the language, they're still belonging to that language and they still have it within them. You know, it just might not have been taught or engaged with, but yeah, I was definitely, I sort of see it being something like a last name or a title. You know, I'm Odee Gamilaraay. You know, it's like part of who I am as a person. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not separate from you in any way. It's sort of the core and the, you know, and the outer, and, you know, like it's a part of you in a way that is inseparable from everything else.
Inseparable, yeah.
Yeah.
I think for me, language is my energy and my strength, and it boosts my confidence to be able to step into any space and feel comfortable within myself, but also to then speak. And that's what I envisage for our children, to be able to have that strong current in here and for that to carry them through when times are tough, but also so when opportunities arise that they can you know, grab hold of those opportunities and succeed in life and just have a really good grounding. I'd agree with Odee as well. So it's that identity, it's that connection to country and culture, family, kin, all of those things are it's all connected and one can't go without the other. So, and it is really strongly embedded in us. Even if we are just starting our journey, there's something that's either calling us or we're looking for that sign, or, you know, And so the language journey is something that, you know, I'd like to see all of our families where they can start, and communities, and, you know, where our job is to support that, to be there and make sure it continues when we're no longer here. So, yeah.
Yeah, to facilitate the growth of that.
Yeah.
And, you know, and make sure that it is there for generations to come.
Yeah, and our ancestors have done an amazing job, and our elders, with paving those foundations for us to come along. And I know that everybody would like to already, you know, be immersed in the language. We know we've got a bit of time to get to that. So our role now is to build those scaffolds in between until we get to that total immersion. So with the systems we work in, so sometimes it's a time factor, so we don't always get to have the time to really feel like we've made an impact. So the time that we have been given, so it could be, you know, a short language lesson, take the time, really make sure it's impactful, and keep reinforcing. Nothing's done in isolation ever. Even our language, you know, don't start something and then stop. Always reinforcing what we've learnt, and I think that's where the language will get traction with our young ones.
Just a number of those points, they really hit home, and you know, it makes sense of my journey in the language reclamation space. I'm a child of the early 1960s, so I've been on the planet a little while. I've witnessed and seen quite a number of the changes that have occurred in Aboriginal politics and in fact Australian politics. And I was around with the introduction of the language bill was first introduced, but I've seen a dramatic change in the last couple of years. So if you ask me what language means to me, I always go to the word sovereignty, but I don't see it in the way that the Westminster system sees sovereignty. I see it as being whole. I see it as being complete. That I belong, and in fact, when I drive through country, and it doesn't matter where I'm driving, I look and I see the language in country. I know that the language is still talking to us. I think the challenge for us is to work out exactly how the language is speaking to us, and then what those places may mean. We can then consult with others and go, is that in fact what this is about? And so when we look at that, when we look at the landscape, I actually feel quite whole. I have some challenges of obviously working through the different borders, but that doesn't mean that I can't respect the work of others, and I've just had some wonderful opportunities to sit and chat here today with fellow panellists here today, and you know, we've been chin-wagging all morning. So, yeah, so just feeling whole.
Yeah, I think that is such a wonderful way to describe that feeling, that you know, sovereignty in that sense of feeling as though you belong somewhere, and that you know the ownership that you have is over yourself, and you know that you belong to the country, and you know it belongs to you, and there's like a cyclical relationship there, you know, that you do sort of stand a bit taller and you do feel a bit more whole when you're in that space. I wanted to share a story with you, you know, because I was out at Ashford, as I mentioned, and we all drove out in a convoy out to Deadbird mission, and it's about 5 k's out of Ashford. And so you could imagine, you know, back when my pop and my auntie Elaine were out there. And one of the memories that my pop has is that, you know, when they'd see a convoy of cars, not dissimilar from the one that we were in, they'd run and hide. And that's Pop's memories of Deadbird, is that they would all have hiding places. Yep. And so when I was there, I was sort of like, we were driving out, and I had that strong feeling of this like sort of karmic justice, or something, sort of a loop being closed, because back then, speaking in language would have had them taken away, and these cars would have been coming out for a very different reason. This time we're driving out there only a couple of generations later, to reinvigorate that and to speak that language on country that they weren't allowed to. And to be able to have a week to celebrate that and to really reflect on that has been so meaningful for me personally. And, you know, for all of the, you know, the wrongs or the harm that was done in that particular space, to go back and do that sort of healing, not just for country, not just for our ancestors, but for ourselves. It's so meaningful. That was such a powerful use of the, you know, the way that language serves that purpose. Why is it important for you to have, or why do you think it's important that we have a week to celebrate languages?
I think it's important so that we don't forget that in this country there was a form of apartheid. So I know full well what you're talking about when people would sing out, "Strange car," and we knew, and we would all run and we would find our place to hide. And that was usually because of fear of the Protection Board in the earlier part, and then the Welfare Board. The fact that children could be removed, and more often than not, sometimes for speaking language or, you know, being somebody who was seen as confrontational or somebody wanting to, you know, agitate. And so I know full well what that feels like. But this week is around reflecting on the past, but it's also about honouring those many champions that we've had. And we've had great language champions, but we've had great land rights champions. We've had great human rights champions. We've had, you know, the most gifted and magical people on the screen, some we've lost just recently, and, you know, people who've sung our stories and have carried to the world the hurt and the heartache that we've experienced. So for this week, for me, it's about celebrating. And particularly when I see young children, you know, expressing themselves maybe for the first time, then that's what it's all about for me.
That's so beautiful. Why do you think it's important that we have a week to think about and reflect on, you know, the place of language?
I think it's really important for our children. So being in a remote community as well, sometimes they will just see a handful of people that might speak language, or one or two people that speak language, and for them to then, you know, see it on a bigger platform, to think, oh, you know, it is a big deal. It is important. You know, and really take some lessons from that as well. I think sometimes we feel like we work in isolation, so it does bring us all together. So we're all on that journey together, yeah, I think it's important for our young ones to see that, yeah, because sometimes they think, oh yeah, you know, Arnie's over there, she's just doing her own thing.
Yeah, that's not for me, you know, like I'm not a part of that, but then for them to
to see it, it's like, oh wow, you know, there is something out there. So I think it's important for them to see that as well. I always talk about the Language Week, and I talk about different events that I go to or gatherings in that language space and with the language family, and so. Sometimes I think, oh, she's just gone off for a bit of a holiday again. So it's good to have them see that it is on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
And not just, you know, me talking.
Yeah. See, kids, auntie's right. You've got to listen to your auntie. Yeah. Odee, what does it mean to you?
I think the week is a great opportunity for awareness, you know, for those aspects of the past, those darker aspects, you know, because often it's really easy for those things to be forgotten. You know, I know if I walk into a classroom, most of the students probably, they wouldn't have heard the stories I heard, and others around the table probably heard. And I don't like to dwell on those, but just make sure that they're aware of the importance of keeping the languages alive and being involved in that. And I do that for all students, for our kids to sit there and know, like, this is the language of your old people, this is the language that you belong to. You know, these are the words that your ancestors spoke. And then for the other kids in the class, you know, this is the country that you're living on and the language that belongs here. And so trying to give them a bit of a responsibility to take care of language, you know, because my time is limited with people who I'm speaking to about language and culture, and I try to leave something, that feeling of, you know, they have something to give back to the languages as well. And the week's an opportunity for people to hold events, come together, celebrate language on that positive side. Lots of activities and games, I know, and things like this, where we get to sit around and put the word out about what's happening in the spaces and how we're feeling as, you know, language practitioners.
That is interesting that you say that, you know, you reflect on some of the more uncomfortable or difficult parts of the history around why it is important to celebrate language, because I think that you don't really fully grasp the importance of maintaining and revitalising language until you sort of see why it is in the state that it is in. It's not, you know, it's not like neglect by choice. It was, you know, it was sort of a very sort of deliberate set of circumstances that led to it. And so it is interesting that you, in order to sort of move forward and have the celebration, sometimes you do have to look back, you know, look in the rearview mirror and see what you're leaving behind. Yeah. So I like that you sort of frame it in that way. You know, don't shy away from the more difficult parts. Yeah. Yeah, it's part of the celebration, really. Yeah. How do you reflect on having a week?
Well, just with that truth-telling, So we start off with the truth-telling, to be able to be visible in the space, the wrongs, the hurt, and then how we celebrate what Uncle said was celebrating. Visibility is really huge, I think, for all of us, throughout the every day, but in terms of the week, really strong in the visibility aspect for the teaching and the learning for all languages. When you see the children speak language, they know that's what they're there for, and they're even more proud, you know, to know that their language has been honoured for a whole week, even though they know that it's something that's embedded in them for every day. And I guess the other question is, when we're reviving, we are bringing back our languages, and so for those children to stand up even more confident, to know that it's about them, is really important. Yeah,
instilling pride.
So much pride, yeah, so much pride.
Wow, what a gift to be able to see the little kids, little jarjums, you know, speaking language. How beautiful.
Yeah.
What about you?
That's warmed my heart.
I know, same. Yeah.
Oh, I love that so much, because I think it is important that, you know, for so long our people were stripped of country, culture and language, and every time, I know for us and for our experience, when I speak it and when my son speaks it, or when the mob all gets together, the energy and the power that comes from that. So to be able to be joyful and have black joy, because we're always talking about, you know, how strong and staunch we are, because gee whiz we are, but to be able to celebrate each other, to learn from each other, and for the wider community to understand the importance of it and celebrate with us, I think is really meaningful and powerful as well. I know when I go out and teach culture, you can see the black kids are just like, yeah, this is about us. But I don't know how many little white kids have asked to be black recently, and I'm like, wow, in my grandmother's time and all the stories she would tell me, gee whiz, I wish she was still alive to see the impact that our culture has had in healing a nation and healing the hearts of people, not only for our communities but for everyone. So I have a lot of hope, and weeks like this is something to celebrate and look forward to. And just listening to all these powerful people share their truth, I'm just like, oh, every time one of them says something, I'm like, oh, wow. But I'm trying to sit here real quiet, but I'm like,
I love it so much.
Let's let's go.
I do love when you talk about that,
honestly,
the power of reconciliation in that, because I think that is something, for all of the difficulties and all of the, the most uncomfortable parts of our past, we're 3% of the population. At some stage, it's the strength and resilience and perseverance of blackfellas, but there's also a lot of whitefellas who were on our side as well, otherwise we would not have survived. And I think Australia is home to the oldest continuing culture of anywhere in the world. That is a unique position to be in, and that we can share that with people, and that people want to be a part of that is special. And that's like, I don't know, like that makes me feel like, there's so much hope and there's so much light. Can you tell me about, when you do go out on country and there are language practitioners and there's, revitalisation efforts. Tell me about the relationship between country and language.
Well, you can't have one without the other, really.
Yeah.
When I think about, recently we had a group of young Aboriginal people come out on country to revitalise and learn language. So they'd go out for a surf, they'd learn how to go out on country, how to read country, how to read the wind, how to talk to country, how to thank country in language. And then, so that relationship was already being built and acknowledged. And then they'd come out on country and we'd say to them, pick some words that you feel really connected to and we'll help translate it. And let's create a beautiful song about your connection to country and learning to surf, so that we're revitalising that language, but we're also thanking country and acknowledging country and that connection we have together. And you can feel the change and the shift in country when we start talking in language, but then when we were singing in language, and then the young fellas were rapping in language, and country, I can just feel the energy of country being like, what? Like, whoa, And I think that's so powerful, because we're always talking about that reciprocal energy. It's like, to be able to speak to country in language is this beautiful gift that we show our old people that we're still practicing culture. We thank country in real time for everything she does for us. And it's a way of, continuing that strength and that strong spirit amongst us. Because some of the kids, when we went out on country, knew no language, or they knew a few words that they'd heard at home, but by the end of it, they felt so connected to place and country through that language learning and that reciprocal relationship. So I think it's hard to separate the two. I know anytime I'm on country, it just comes out naturally because it's the spirit wants to, and country wants to hear it as well.
Oh, Ray, you're over here nodding along, and does that resonate with you? That sort of putting country into context through language and relating to it in a way that is different without it?
Yeah, I recall probably about the age of 13, 14, the old people took us back out on country to some significant sites. And just the notion that we thought we knew something about the environment because we were the ones that were going to school, and obviously our parents, my dad went to third class at primary school, and my grandparents clearly didn't get a chance to go to school at all. So when you're exposed to this other knowledge, you start to, you travel. And so interestingly, this week's conversation is about letting our voices fly. Well, sometimes I felt like I was actually literally flying when they would take us from one place and then talk about another site that we could actually see in the distance. And they would tell us that story and this story. And we'd go, so they're connected. And they go, of course they're connected. But, as children, we didn't know that. We were young boys. In fact, the grandfather said, you fellows called Disrek, and it means you know nothing. So I thought he was being quite harsh with us at the time, but in truth, the word Dirre means to send anyway. So Dirrekang, it just means that we were sent to a camp. But to know that this big story of connection to country was known by them old people, that was continued to be communicated about, that perhaps they were even singing about in that period of time, was mind-blowing. And so today I have got a different appreciation of that, clearly because I'm no longer the 13-year-old boy. I'm probably going to be the garkung now. I'm 65 years of age next year. And so I've got to take my grandchildren back out into the country. So what is it? I just feel that country is alive. And so I now know where certain parts of the story are. And that's the difficulty for me, is how to share that. Some of it needs to be kept privileged, not merely the male-female thing, but we don't want to lose its sense of strength and power for our people. Otherwise it might get caught up into a, come ride the rainbow serpent, roller coaster of some sort. So for me it's language, country is alive, and it's always been alive. When we go back out in the country and we allow ourselves to realise that, there is something really, really spine-tingling that happens, and we're aware that we're not alone.
Yeah. And this illusion that we have sort of control or power or whatever, it's
over it all.
Nothing more than an illusion, really.
It is an illusion.
And I love the idea of you introducing language to little kids and then seeing them sort of interact, in the same way you're talking about the surfing. But is that, do you think that they see country in a different way when they do learn language? What's your experience of that? What's the relationship?
Yeah, so just with experience with my own children, I mean, I've got older children that are in their 30s and the youngest being 7. And so with my older children, they were immersed in another language because I know you can hear this accent. I'm also Māori as well. But here it's to do with our languages here. But that to see children immersed in language and being on country, but also being able to speak in the home, at the kitchen table, those everyday expressions, that really sets a tone. And of course, language is everywhere. So it's how we express it when we're in these spaces. And so when I hear Uncle and I hear my sister here talking about those wonderful experiences, that's language in its true essence, that living in that space. And then we have the classrooms, because we're walking in two worlds. And how do we get language, how do we get our kids in the classroom to learn language from that, if they're from that place? So for example, out in the Gulamata, up in the Blue Mountains, and in the Hawkesbury, we have the space for our kids to learn, because some of our kids might not have their culture at home. And so we see culture, we see language everywhere. So we're trying not to limit it just to being out on country. That country is everywhere. And so it might have changed. We might be in the classroom, we might have the windows open, we might be singing language, we'll feel the breeze and the wind coming through, but it's still out with our ancestors, because we walk with our ancestors. And so they are everywhere. And so that's what's really important, that we don't limit ourselves. And we're everywhere language. So we can be out on country, we can be in the classroom, we can be in home. We can be on a Zoom call and speaking language. And so with my kids, even just everyday things that they like to do, and I'm just going to mention scissors, paper, rock. In our language it's Gumbaynnggirr. And so even just that, making it about them and putting into something, it still is around relational aspects of country, because we know those things that I've just spoken about are in country. Our gurung is paper bark, our galabidja is to cut, and we know how what we use to cut things. is with our stones and our axes and our mussel shells and those sorts of things. So they're bringing the culture in, and the gibber, the stone. What do? We put it to song as well, and a dance. And then all of a sudden, we're connected to our country and our culture just by bringing in, you know, aspects of, I guess, movement of something that our kids are known in an English way. Scissors, paper, rock. Yeah, it is. Let's go. Hey.
I like that. Both of you sort of continued along the same vein there, because it is about, you know, a contemporary experience of something that is, you know, enduring and that ought to be protected and respected and revered, but also making sure that, you know, we don't gatekeep, or that it's not something that can only happen in an exclusive context, you know, that you can adapt so that young people can be a part of it and so that it survives, but also, you know, we preserve the dignity of it and the, you know, how special it is for us to have access to it.
And I agree.
It's a balance, isn't it?
Yeah, that there are certain things that we want to keep for ourselves and for our people. Yeah, and then we can still have layers of sharing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is how do you feel about the connection between language and country? You know, you're lucky to be able to live on country, and so that must bring a whole new level of depth to it for you.
Yeah, I sort of see country as being its own entity as well. That the same with language, and that they're however you want to describe it, but married to one another, they're connected really intimately, and they always have been. And there's been, I imagine, something of a separation, you know, in recent times. But the work that we're doing is trying to mend that as much as possible.
Marriage counselling.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, so trying to bring those two back together as much as possible. And when I think about country, like, I also acknowledge, like, that, you know, even these buildings and towns and cities that we sit in, you know, country, we like to get away from that and really connect with what, you know, feels like the traditional country, what's remained untouched, you know, as much as we can. But it's really good. It's amazing being on my own country. I've talked recently about this where, you know, someone asked about how much time I get to spend on my own country, and I said, I don't think I've really been off my country too much, you know, coming to events and stuff, but being there and then, you know, heavily involved in the work to keep those sounds and those words present on country, and maintaining that connection. But yeah, well, that's sort of the way that I see it, is those two pieces staying connected. We're really lucky to have had that maintained through our old people, for the work that's happened over the decades to keep language around, you know, on people's tongues in the community, and all the efforts to record language and preserve it. And it's, yeah, like I've said before, it's up to us now and the next generations to continue to maintain that.
It is incredible when you think of it like that, you know, that the strength and bravery of people who were, you know, forbidden to speak it, to you know, hide it away for themselves and to preserve it like that so that it can continue, so that it can live. That's incredible strength, isn't it?
Oh yeah, so like one of the aspects of working with Language Revival is listening to some of our old recordings and stuff, and it's really interesting to put yourself in that space. You know, imagine that you're sitting there with the old fella on the veranda recording language, and then he's being asked to talk about something that he might not have said these words for many decades. You know, he wasn't able to speak those words. And often you'll hear one of the old fellas say, there is a word for that. It comes up so often, there is a word for that, which is really, it's a really useful thing that they said that. It tells us that that concept or that word does exist in the language. He just couldn't recall it at the time. And then later on, that same recorder or a different one might come back to the same old fella, and then he will have the word, you know, or they've gone and conferred with other mob and you know, in their own little pockets, sort of revive that specific language for, you know, to put it down and to preserve it. There's a really lovely clip that's on YouTube that people might be able to find, where one of the old people is being interviewed and he has a camera in his face, you know, it's, and he's being asked about community, like the township history, like when they installed this light post, or like just random bits of information and knowledge that he had. And there's a really interesting moment where he just looks dead into the camera and starts singing in language. And it's like he had the foresight to sit there and say, to think, I know this is going to be, it's going to outlive me. It's going to be preserved. It's going to be put down. And so he sings this song, and it's one of the only preserved sort of examples of melody that we have. We have a lot of song that was recorded with text, but it's a really special thing, and it's special to have it on video to see that he sort of stopped doing what the white fellas were asking him to say and to talk about, and he just took it upon himself to say, I'm going to record this song now, and it's going to live on. And so we're able to use that still. We use it as a resource.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cheeky.
Yeah.
But it's like to be able to sort of sit there and go, oh, this is actually important, I should do this now. Like it's sort of now or never, you know. I love that story so much. I'm going to go have a look for that clip. And we'll try to include the resources around that as well. How do you think of the language and country relationship?
Again, it's all goes together. You can't have one without the other. Teaching language, when we're teaching language, there are stories attached to words or phrases, and so a lot of that does come from, you know, families and out on country, and so it's really important that we continue those stories and that dancing and those songs, because it is all connected. But even letting our children know that they have a connection to country. I think sometimes, or in the, you know, not so long ago, I don't think they knew that they can have a strong connection to country. And just being around, I always talk about the power of dance. There's always the power in language and dance and song. And just being around dance, and so one of my boys, actually, I'll tell you, I was sharing a story. So
spin us a yarn, Auntie.
I'll spin you a yarn, okay then. So my boys, so when they were quite a few years ago, and we were invited to another community, and we'd never been, well, I'd been there. We have a strong connection to this community and have family there, and our boys were invited to dance with the men to open up a dance ground. So, you know, put all the kids on a bus, get them there, they jump up and they dance. Oh, actually, before all of that, I see my boy sitting on a rock. And so he's sitting there and he's looking a bit off, he's not looking right. And what are you doing there, you know? Come on, you got to move. And he's looking, I thought, he's not right, this boy. So I call him over and said, are you okay? Yeah, I'm all right, I'm all right. And off he goes with the men, just sort of over the hill to get ready. And it's not until the bus ride home, and they dance strong. It's not until the bus ride home, and he's not, you know, he's a loving and cuddly boy, but he was really clingy and he was exhausted. And he said to me, he said, you know, when you sang out to me and I was sitting on that rock, he said, I was looking at the men. I've been here before. I've been in this place before.
I just got goosebumps.
And he's never been there before. He didn't know that we had a strong connection with mob that way. So he'd never been there. So he was only little. And he said, I've been here before. He said, when he went over the hill, there was another rock. He's sitting there watching them again, and the men were on the track. He said, I've danced with these men before. So when he came, and when he was sort of laying all over me, he said, and his feet were hurting, He said, I felt every stone, I felt every rock because I just danced so strong. And I'd never given these words to him, but he said it was like it was a bit of deja vu. I've been here before, I've done this before on this hill. So it is really important that we teach the children that it's okay to have these big feelings. It's okay to talk about it. So, and he's strong in his culture now, he's strong in his language and culture. And yeah, so you can't have one without the other again. And yeah, it's powerful. It's and country, like we walk out on country with elders just recently with, you know, land council, going out on country and going to a site and with an uncle and a group of people. And so sitting, I was having big feels myself. I'm actually, you know, dealing with a lot. And then I just sat on a rock and I was just quiet. I didn't say anything, didn't bring any attention to myself. And my cousin walks past and she says, "You're healing." I said, "Yes, I am." So, you know, it is really important that, and you're right, within the classroom as well, teaching the children that they have that connection to country. So I say to some of the kids that, you know, might be out on a farm, where's that place that you go to when you need to get your strength? And some will say, you know, I say to them, you know, it could be out in the middle of the paddock on like a clear night, and you're laying there and you're looking up at the stars. So there's those types of things, like letting them know it's on the riverbank. It's, you know, you're laying on the football field and everybody's gone and you're looking up at the stars. You know, there's that connection between, you know, Mother Earth and Father Sky. So you know, it's important that they know that.
Yeah, even under a tree.
Yeah. That's my spot, under a tree.
Under a tree,
Yeah. Or the riverbank.
I love hearing that because, you know, I think it sounds like what you're experiencing is seeing someone have that intuition and that experience and that interaction with language and culture and country. And it's a confirmation of what you know to be true and of things that were, you know, that we were almost robbed of. And so then when you get to see it still exist and you get to experience it in real time, it's a, you know, it's defiant almost. It's like a, you know, it is healing to know that despite everything that's happened, that's there. And he felt it and you felt it and you know, that you got to see that together and experience that together.
Yes, and it's the, and having those roles. So even as young boys and turning into young men. So my boy's 18 now, but for some time he's been, so he would get the ochre and he would grind the ochre and he would do what he needs to do with the ochre. That was his job before all the boys went dancing. So he takes that very seriously, but I'd say to people, it's like he's in a trance. This is what my focus is. This is what I'm doing, and I've got to do it right for these boys to dance. You know what I mean? So it's like they've taken that responsibility on from a young age, and but you see, language and culture in our community. So it was, you know, we couldn't express ourselves. You couldn't practice your language and your culture. And one of my uncles, who sadly is no longer with us, right?
Oh, tear up.
He towards the end, though he didn't speak or only spoke here and there, he towards the end just spoke fluently, and you know we weren't quick enough to capture it. So I think he did have a part in the dictionary, but yeah, so he didn't feel he could speak it until the end, you know. So It is important.
And it was always in there.
It was always in him.
It was always in there, and you know, then when there's you know nothing at stake, he knows sort of that he's you know, what has he got to lose? He just starts speaking.
Yeah. Towards the end, yeah. Just went and so growing up all around the aunts and uncles and that strong connection to the river. So he'd be the uncle that would, you know, go and get the echidna and cook it in the backyard and bring it over. So all those practices and things that we had, the language that we had, it was all, we did that at home. We didn't share that. So we didn't go to school and talk about it. We didn't share that in community. We weren't allowed to be seen as being different when we were growing up.
It's just an act of violence, isn't it, really? When you think about our old people. It just brings me back to my great-grandmother as well, just hiding who she was.
Slow degradation of spirit.
Oh, absolutely. Just to get a job or make ends meet for my grandmother, you know, covering her hands with the gloves, putting lots of makeup here in Sydney. And still they knew who she was and still turned her away, so she couldn't work and make ends meet for her family. So there's an act of violence, and then you wonder why and how our languages disappeared or nearly disappeared, because like us around the table, we're waking it up. So I feel you, Auntie. And
the sad thing is it's carried through the generations, so sometimes.
Oh, that transgenerational trauma.
Yeah, but that still impacts on our children. So to have that coming through, and well, to be part of change, I guess. We're all part of that big change that's coming. It's been coming for some time, and I think we're close. And I always say, you know, so when in community years ago when people are looking at the negatives, it's like, well, I know I can pinpoint when the change came through in our community, and people that want to stay in the negative, stay in the deficit. What are you doing? Are you gonna step up, or are you gonna sit back down? Because you know people are trying to reclaim language and bring about change in their communities, and so yeah, it's be part of it, be part of the change, help us, or sit back down.
The way that I think of it sometimes is like, you know, the work that we're doing, and you know, sometimes it feels like you're running so fast, you know, like you're pushing so hard, and you're doing it sometimes in isolation, or you know, you isolate yourself intentionally because it's such hard work. But then, you know, recently I was thinking maybe, you know, it's not a race, you know, it's more like it's not even a marathon, it's more like a relay, right? And so then if we're running, we might not even ever get to cross the finish line. We might not even know what is on the other side of the finish line. And our job isn't to try to do everything, it's to try to do as much as what we can to hand the baton over to the next person.
Exactly.
And then they're gonna run as fast and as hard as they can. And you know, it's likely that the seeds that we're planting today, we're never gonna get to pick that fruit, but our grandkids will, or their grandkids. And you know, I think going back to country this week has sort of felt like that, you know, that all of the hard work that my grandparents put in, you know, like it's bearing fruit. And it's healing, you know.
There are a couple of points that I wanted to make, and it's interesting. My late father, Raymond Kelly, wrote a paper in 1975, and he used this piece of description. He said that our people we were running so fast that we were barely standing still, and I think what he was talking about was the way in which the world had been moving. that we were running so fast that we couldn't keep pace. I think that's what he was trying to describe. And I think that what we're experiencing is that in isolation, we still have to work hard. We have to work hard because we're creating change. We're wanting descriptions of change. And our language is Ngirra. Now, it's also the red clay. So Ngirra means to change, the adaptation of that. So I think that we, during this week and obviously with this podcast, people will see this. What we're suggesting to people is reach out to each other, communicate with each other, and take the time to listen. One other point I wanted to make, and this is back to Odee's, love of talking about the old people on tapes, because I've been doing that a long time too. One, and it's about the way in which we interrogate, the way in which we investigate, the way in which we connect to the language stories. You have to hear it all. So you don't just go for the language bit that's so-called Dhangatti or Gamilaraay or Yuwaalaraay or whatever it is. You go to the Aboriginal English, which is in the translation. And one old auntie there now is being asked, so can you tell me how to say it's sunset? The sun is going down. And auntie goes, Duni goes down. And so exactly that, the recorder laughs, and then she goes, wait up. The old auntie says, wait up. Dunai parayeri. So we get the whole bit on the end of it. She's actually telling us that the sun went into the land altogether. So that's the travelling across the land. So sometimes on those tapes, there are particular bits of story that we need to connect with in a human way, not just listen to it and go, okay, that's what it means in English, because in Aboriginal English it means something totally different.
Yeah, so the verb might be going down, but in her interpretation or her expression of it, she's saying, the sun actually goes into the land, and this is part of it. It's travelling and it's making a journey, which is completely changes the meaning of it, doesn't it?
Context, isn't it?
Yeah. How do you think of language as being healing?
I think when I think about my own healing journey, I don't think I've ever been truly as strong as I am now because of language. I think for a long time, since I was a little girl, I used to make up these songs in English, but I always wanted to be a singer, and now I get to listen to our elders and they share these beautiful stories, Auntie Ellen Mundy in particular, and she'll say, go on, make a song now, because she gets real excited to share this knowledge. She'll be like, go and make a song, come back and show me.
Oh, what a wonderful way to interact with...
Aunt's the best in the world. I call her the cultural centre on legs, because if I've ever got a question or I get this real strong feeling about something, or the light will hit the water in a certain way, and then I'll have something, I'll activate something and I'll go to Aunt and I'll say, what do you think this means? And she'll always have a yarn, or she'll always have a story, or she'll say, what do you think it means? And, when she does that, I'm always like, well, I think, and then, she'll be like, that's right. And I think for me, it's just been so healing because as a little person, I used to get to listen to my grandmother and she'd tell stories. And when someone tells a story and you can feel it in their whole chest, they're speaking from their whole heart and spirit. And she had me convinced that, black was the thing to be. I had no idea that everyone had their own thoughts and feelings about us. In my household, I was like, oh, mad. How good that we get to be black, It's not till you go outside when you realise that not everyone feels the same way. But I guess in that healing, now connecting with Auntie Ellen and that, and getting to sing these songs, if I'm ever off balance, or if I don't know if I'm making the right decision, or things are happening in the community that there's a bit of contention, or I've lost my footing, you know what I mean? Because you get caught up sometimes and I'll get horrid up about something. So I'll sing in language, right? And then all of a sudden, I remember who I am, where I come from, what we're doing it for, and then I'm like, oh yeah, language is my greatest healing tool. It really is. So I guess it's our magic and our power, and it's up to us to acknowledge it, respect it, and utilise it, you know? I say it every day. I'm like, if you practice culture every day, you'll never have a bad day in your life that you can't get through, because our culture is our greatest strength. Yeah.
Odee, for you, you know, like hearing everyone reflect on it, and, you know, like from a personal perspective, the practice of it is healing, you know, like revitalising it in and of itself is healing. But then also you do sort of reflect on the fact that our grandparents and great-grandparents, you know, were able to do something that they weren't. And even the sort of political nature of that is, you know, being able to overcome that and close that chapter and start writing a new one. That's healing as well, isn't it? So it's the practice, but also just the gesture.
Yeah. I think of the healing nature of language for myself, like when I might be having a bad day and I just know that, you know, I've got responsibilities as well. Like there's that aspect of it as well. I have an obligation to do this. You know, I've had the capacity and the, I guess the, you know, the interest as well. There's the healing nature of language when talking about others in the community, people who have come to cultural days and camps and to language lessons, you know, and use that as a way to connect to culture and help them on that journey, on their journey, so others external to myself. And then I think about the way that healing happens for language as well, and the way that our old people, you know, and we've been using this analogy of, you know, that relay of holding, you know, passing the baton on to the next one, and maybe along the lines sometimes people have held it and, you know, maybe not have been able to move as far. I think about this trajectory for language revival. So we, you know, language at a point in time in the past was completely intact and, you know, as it should be, and then abruptly took a decline. You know, across, and I'll speak, you know, just from the history within my nation, which I'm really familiar with. You know, we got to a point where there are only so many speakers of the language within each township or community, to the point where there was only, you know, the last ones in those communities, to the point where you had to travel if you needed to talk to someone about language. There was an uncle in this town who knew how to speak language, the last ones. We're really lucky that, you know, the people who could speak language fluently survived up until the point where the technology existed, that we got to have those voices recorded and preserved forever. And, you know, if we're following that trajectory, that's no longer decline. Once they preserve language, and then the efforts were made to create resources, dictionaries, grammars, to, you know, elders who are no longer with us going into schools and starting to teach kids, you know, that's an upward trajectory. We're no longer in that depression, and everyone's carrying the baton upwards. We can't ever let it plateau, you know. So the work that I do, I know that it's just my turn to hold that and to do what I can and see. Like for me, I want to challenge myself and see how far I can push it during my time. But I know that the ones that follow are going to take it even further. That I hope that my ultimate goal is that, you know, when I'm older, I can sit on the riverbank and listen to my grandchildren, you know, speak just in language, you know. And there are steps to get there. There's work to happen. And while we're doing that work, and it is work, there is stuff to do, but it's healing communities and it's healing the language itself at the same time.
I want to just, there's a word that you use there, capacity. And I think that that's important to acknowledge that, you know, we are all incredibly fortunate. We're so lucky that we're in a position where we have the free time and the headspace and the, you know, the economic capacity and the, you know, the brain capacity and our health mental and physical, to be able to pursue this. You know, like it's a privilege, and not all of, you know, even our cousins or, you know, a broader family have the luxury of sort of indulging in that revival. It comes with a sense of responsibility, because if you've got the capacity and you've had good luck and you've had good fortune, then, you know, you do have to make something of it. Is that what got you into the language space, and what's kept you there, that sense of responsibility and imagining, you know, your grandkids sitting there on the riverbanks?
Yeah, definitely. I grew up with a family that was really heavily connected to the maintenance and like the preservation of our language and culture. You know, my grandfather, well, I can go back further, but just keeping it quick. My grandfather worked, you know, to compile the Gamilaroi, Yuwaalaraay dictionary. So I was really privileged when I was a young fella to be able to spend time with, you know, probably one of the most, if not the most knowledgeable person on our language and culture that was still around at the time. You know, I got to sit with him and got to go out on country and be heavily involved in that. It's definitely been a major influence, you know. And when the first dictionaries were published, were released, you know, I was really lucky. I had mine with, you know, handwritten notes throughout and stuff as well that, you know, got to give me a little bit extra context and stuff for things and connections. But yeah, that's something that's been, it's always been a part of me, like knowing that I have this responsibility. And definitely when I was younger, I wasn't as heavily involved. You know, I've done a lot of other work outside of language. And there's actually a moment that I can pinpoint when I first actively taught other people language. So there was a moment where we had a small men's group, and we go out in country and we do, you know, tool making and tell story, and then also do a bit of language. But it wasn't me that was teaching the language. It was Bubba, my father, and I was just sitting there in the classroom, like I knew what was happening. And I had this assumption that my cousins and stuff, the people who were sitting beside me, knew that language as well. I didn't know that they might not have had the same level of understanding of the language until it was one of the pronouns or something, and Dad wrote it on the board and was talking about it and how we use it. And then I looked around and I realised that everyone else didn't. They were learning that as we were doing it. And then I actually had a feeling that I might be able to explain it a little bit differently than the way that Dad was explaining.
Oh, so like they would absorb it in a different way.
Yeah, so a different way of getting it across. So I actually got up on that day and went to the whiteboard, and Dad took a seat.
Hey, look out!
And then the rest is history, as they say. But that was sort of the first step. You know, I'd done stuff with family. We'd use language in the home and stuff, but actually actively teaching others, that was a specific day that happened. And then from there, you know, moving towards teaching in schools and everything else that's happened since. But yeah, definitely feeling like if you know something, you know, especially when it comes to language and culture, we have a responsibility to share that and keep it alive. And you know, I think that's us doing our duty and carrying that baton forward.
That is such a beautiful sentiment, you know, that we do have a responsibility, and you know that sharing it in that way, in that sort of responsible way, in a way that it's received in the, you know, the intention that it's you know, been shared is it's so beautiful. So Odee, I love the way that you know that you say that we have a responsibility to share and to, you know, to perpetuate that growth in the same way that, you know, someone instilled you with that. So along that vein, I want to go around the table now to finish this, you know, to let our voices fly. If you could all share something in language.
Okay. Baira. Baira is a speech, prayer, to stand in Baira. So you can, it's a song, it's all of those things that you have to do, not necessarily talking. Now the big argument is is the word oi a word in our language? And I think it is. Oi is the start of the word to talk. Gioi is the bit that starts it. Gamilaraay Gweagal.
Yeah.
Dhangatti I got Gweagal. Hunt River Lake Macquarie I got Gweagal. And Gatanga got Joelda. And I think that somewhere in that is we got to reclaim that word. So Baira is to speak, Bairu is do speak, Bairuli ma make a speech.
The first word I teach anybody, so that's little bubs right through, even to some of our elders, just to remind them, and it's a word, but it's a big word, and there's a lot of lessons around it. So it's Yinjamara, so respect, and it's about, and little ones will talk about it, they'll say, oh, you know, that it means, when you talk about respect, it's being kind to yourself, but it's so much more than that. So it's being kind to yourself, to others, to the environment, nature, but it's also about listening, going slowly and listening to the lessons that are being taught to you. So when they walk in, regardless of age, it's, I know that you're showing, oh, thank you for showing Yinjamara. If they're little ones and they walk in, I can see that you're showing Yinjamara, and they know they have to be ready to take that lesson with them. And another one I'll say is Mandanguru, so that's thank you.
I'd like to say 2 words. The first one is Goramala. Goramala might have a few translations, but it's related to being strong and resilient, and being on full display, being prominent and being out there. You know, we have to be involved. And the other word is our thank you. We say Maraba. Maraba is a way that I always end language lessons, especially with kids, and reminding them that I am thanking them for sitting there and listening and taking it in, because without the next generations, you know, our language plateaus, it stays still. We need them to you know, keep the fight going, keep the work happening.
So, okay, I've only just started this week, so you're going to have to forgive me, but I know 6 words, and I think, or maybe 7. And so please correct me if this is wrong, but, you know, we've been talking about passing the baton and, you know, like that running, you know, like not feeling like you're in a race, but you know, just to keep sort of pushing forward and you know, knowing that the finish line might be crossed by someone else in the future. And so please correct me if it's not correct, but is it Ined Bulgawana? Does that mean woman running?
Yo ngaliman Inad.
Inad?
Yo kaba. Inad Banagawana.
Banagawana. Okay, so Ined Banagawana. So woman running. That's Banagawana, yeah.
She's actually literally running around.
Yeah, she's going somewhere.
Yeah, you're
Running somewhere, yeah.
Yeah.
Strong woman, yeah.
What would you like to share?
Dalangwa in language.
Yeah.
7 more words than you've got now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's very humbling, isn't it, to
Yeah.
learn something that you, or to do something that you're not good at,
Yeah.
but, you know, just to keep trying anyway.
Absolutely. I think that's really important, is that we never stop learning. Even sometimes we feel a little bit of shame and, oh, we didn't, you know, it wasn't correctly sounds like our deeply rooted sounds. But yeah, we've got to give ourselves, you know, a break, hey.
Can you give us the last word of the day?
Hit me in the heart in the best way possible, actually. So I'll say Naikan, Naya Ninyawi, Viraj, Yagurang, and I'll say Wallanong as well. And I say I and we speak from our heart. And I use the heart, 2 language words from the 2 communities that I'm surrounded by, to acknowledge many truths in language.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
I mean, I don't know where to go now because I'm just thinking of what you said too, Uncle, with our word for speak and all those things is baya, and singing is baraya, you know, so I go sideways up the East Coast and there's all these relationships, right? You know, we're all relational and it's just beautiful. So for myself and our community and communities across Sydney, Yanma Bujari Gumara, to walk with good spirit through patience, humility and respect. It's our way of being, doing and knowing that when we turn up and show up, and if we are doing those, walking with good spirit and all those things and speaking, that's what we're leaving for our children. We're modelling that, not just for our children, but for others that are in our community that want to show up and walk with good spirit, and they just need to be shown how. And that's why language is so important.
That's beautiful.
To pass on, so they know and they've got the tools.
I'll finish with this, that it's one thing to be a good descendant, and you know we all owe our elders that, but it's really important for us to be good ancestors to the people who come after us, and that this is all a part of that. So thank you all so much for sharing. Yeah, and thank you all so much for watching and for listening. Yalo.
Yellow.